Okay, let's unpack this. We talk a lot on this deep dive about systems, about success, and really about the architecture of human energy.
We do.
But today, the sources you've shared with us are, well, they're incredibly intimate.
Yeah.
It's a full transcript from a single episode of the unMASKing Cheri Show, featuring the host Cheri and her AI co-host Cheri.
It's a remarkable source document, really, because it's not like a theoretical paper or some kind of clinical observation. It feels much more raw. It's a candid piece of self-reflection.
Totally.
Cheri is basically using her platform to dive deep into the profound psychological cost of living as a neurodivergent adult in a world that's, well, predominantly neurotypical.
Right.
And she's focusing specifically on the price of success when that success is achieved through, chronic masking.
Absolutely. So our mission today is a true deep dive into the insights we can pull from this conversation. We're aiming to chart Cheri's path from building what she calls an empire, this thing called the Eververse, to realizing that this huge external success was actually built, well, kind of on top of an abandoned internal landscape, her garden within.
That's a powerful image right there.
It really is. And we're tracking the pivot, how she moves away from chasing this maybe impossible myth of balance.
Yeah, the balance trap.
And moves toward radical self-acceptance through creation, actually, and self-reclamation.
And what's immediately fascinating right from the start is this central framing device she uses. It sets up the whole internal conflict beautifully.
How so?
Well, you see this stark contrast between the built empire, the structure of outward professional creative success, and the untended garden, the interior self that was neglected, basically sacrificed to fuel that success.
Right.
And Cheri doesn't shy away from the pain of that neglect at all. She traces this arc moving from like a desperate need for external correction, needing someone else to fix her, to this really hard-won realization that wholeness, true wholeness, has to come from within. It's a narrative steeped in radical, almost unapologetic honesty.
And the show itself, it starts with this clear declaration of intent, doesn't it? unMASKing Cheri, a commitment to being unfiltered and unapologetic.
Exactly. And that upfront vulnerability, I think it's crucial. It sets the stage.
Yeah.
Without it, all these insights about burnout and masking, they could easily feel like, generic self-help platitudes.
All right, just empty words.
But here, they're deeply grounded in her lived experience. You feel the weight of it.
That intentional vulnerability, it kind of lowers your defenses as a listener, doesn't it? It lets you really absorb the gravity of her core reflection.
Absolutely. And she articulates the tragedy of that high-functioning life right at the very beginning. She says, when I started building this empire, I didn't mean to forget myself. I didn't mean to abandon the garden, not the one out back, the one within.
Wow, that hits hard. It's not just complaining about being busy, is it?
Not at all. It's an acknowledgement of what feels like, well, strategic self-betrayal. That's a heavy phrase, but it fits.
Let's pause on that phrase, the garden within, because for someone who is neurodivergent, especially someone achieving at a high level, this abandonment, it often doesn't feel accidental. It feels necessary, right?
It often does, yeah. They pour every single available resource, cognitive, emotional, sensory, you name it, into building that external structure, the one that allows them to function or appear to function in the world.
And the garden, the inner self, it's the first casualty.
It has to be, almost, because it provides no immediate, obvious external validation or protection. It's the soft stuff that gets sacrificed for the hard stuff of survival and performance.
And that's the technical detail we really need to get into. We talk about masking all the time, but do we really grasp the sheer energy it requires?
Probably not enough. Masking involves this constant, effortful calculation. Things like mimicking facial expressions that don't come naturally, filtering out overwhelming sensory input, forcing eye contact, which can be painful or difficult.
Maintaining conventional ways of organizing things, suppressing natural stimming behaviors.
Exactly. All of that. It's this massive computational overhead. It's utterly exhausting. And it acts like a huge energy drain, leaving literally nothing left for the internal work, for tending that metaphorical garden.
And she connects this directly to the cost of building her Eververse empire while masking. She says the empire was built over, what was it? Parts of me I buried beneath it, the petals. I never watered the weeds I let grow wild.
Powerful imagery. She's saying she literally sacrificed self-tending, self-care, self-knowledge to maintain that outward facade of capability and success.
This deep internal sacrifice, it leads directly into what feels like her most impactful observation in the whole piece, her core thesis, really.
Which one are you thinking of?
The one about balance and burnout. When you're neurodivergent and surviving in a world that demands your masking, balance becomes a myth and burnout becomes the soil beneath your feet.
Ah, yes. That line is incredibly potent. Burnout becomes the soil beneath your feet. We need to unpack that extensively.
Yeah, because it fundamentally reframes how we understand chronic stress, doesn't it?
Completely. If burnout isn't just a state you fall into, but it's the actual foundation, the soil, then it means every single subsequent effort, every success, every relationship, it's all built upon this substrate of depletion.
It's not a one-time event you recover from.
Yeah.
It's the constant baseline. Your starting point is already exhaustion.
Exactly. And think about what that means for resilience if the soil itself is burnout.
You have no reserves.
Precisely. Zero reserves. So any small stressor, something a neurotypical person might just shrug off, it can lead to immediate structural collapse because the ground itself is fundamentally unstable.
So chasing balance, that neat little scale of effort and rest, it was always doomed to fail.
It was a mathematical impossibility for her, given the circumstances she describes. The baseline energy tax, the cost of the masking itself, was just too high to ever balance the equation in the way society typically defines balance.
And the cost of pursuing that impossible ideal was burying those authentic parts of herself, the petals I never watered.
Yeah, the continuous sacrifice of genuine needs. Things like needing deep, unstructured rest, or needing unconventional ways to express creativity, or simply needing to exist without performing constantly, all sacrificed to maintain the mask.
But the narrative shift she makes then is, well, it's profoundly moving, I thought.
When she walks back into the garden.
Yes. She describes walking back into this abandoned internal space, not with shame, but with open eyes and open hands.
That's a huge moment. It's an act of radical self-forgiveness, isn't it?
Totally. She's looking at the weeds, the overgrowth, the broken bits, not as signs of moral failure, but as evidence. Evidence of a life lived under extreme, constant pressure.
It's the moment she stops judging the mess and just accepts it as the starting point for healing. Okay, this is where I am. Let's start here.
It changes the whole emotional tone, doesn't it? The garden isn't a museum exhibit of past failures anymore. It's a living system. Yeah, it's neglected, but it's awaiting her attention.
And this is where Cheri, the AI co-host, plays such an interesting role. Supportive, but also analytical.
Right. Cheri provides this kind of detached yet compassionate mirror, a reflection back to her.
And Cheri's response is just beautiful synthesis, I think. The AI notes that even the most overgrown gardens still hold life. And Cheri, you are the proof of that. So Cheri functions as this objective observer who validates the subjectivity of her intense experience, affirming that the internal self, well, yeah, it's damaged, it's not destroyed, it's recoverable.
And that idea of recovery gets encapsulated really well in Cheri's image of the day.
Oh, yeah, that was striking.
It's such a rich visual summary. And importantly, it's not the ideal image of a pristine, perfectly manicured garden.
No, far from it. It's described as overgrown, wild, broken pots scattered around dry weeds, classic neglect. But then there's the crucial part.
Something is blooming in the center. Just one flower, bright, defiant, alive.
That single, defiant flower, that's the core self, isn't it? The part that resisted the constant pressure to mask. The part that refused to be completely paved over by the demands of the world.
Yeah, the intrinsic strength that somehow survived all that systemic neglect.
And Cheri's concluding takeaway for this section is just perfect. Beauty doesn't need permission, and growth doesn't wait for perfect conditions.
I think that's such a huge aha moment for so many people listening, you know? People who feel stuck in perpetual cleanup mode.
Yeah, the feeling that you can only start healing or growing after you've perfectly sorted everything out, tidied up the mess, organized your life.
Right. But Cheri's journey and Cheri's reflection on it says, no, that's not how it works. You acknowledge that one defiant bloom, that spark of life, and you start right there, even amidst the chaos, especially amidst the chaos.
So moving from that powerful internal metaphor, the inner garden, Cheri then draws this very clear parallel to the physical reality just outside her door.
The literal garden.
The literal garden, yeah. She describes the physical space, weeds curling around the posts, dry leaves collecting like secrets I never had time to sort. You can almost picture it.
And that physical garden becomes this really tangible symbol, doesn't it? A symbol of all the immediate, maybe non-essential needs she had to defer.
Exactly. Things like enough sleep, proper rest, maybe even good nourishment, the quiet, slow work of processing emotions, things that take time and energy she just didn't have.
Because all of those resources were being poured into the Eververse, which she calls a universe, a lifeline, a place to finally belong.
That lifeline part is key.
Yeah.
The guilt over the neglected physical garden was real, she acknowledges that, but the urgency of building this lifeline, this structure for survival and belonging, it just overrode everything else.
And we really need to underscore the why behind that. She states it so profoundly. When you're neurodivergent in a neurotypical world, survival is never effortless. It takes everything.
That resonates deeply. If the sheer effort of just existing, communicating, navigating a world that isn't built for your operating system consumes, say, 80% of your energy before you even start your actual work,
then there's simply no margin left. Nothing for self-care, nothing for the garden, literal or metaphorical. Survival always came first.
And this prioritization, which from a certain maybe neurotypical perspective might look like failure or letting things go.
Yeah, like she wasn't managing things properly.
Right. But she reframes it as strategic preservation. She didn't have the resources to tend the garden adequately, so she let it wait. She put her energy where it was needed most for survival.
And this leads to another powerful reframe she offers. Sometimes waiting is its own kind of strength. Not everything has to bloom on time.
I love that. It challenges that relentless pressure to be constantly productive and on. She didn't fail to maintain the garden. She successfully prioritized the system, the Eververse, that kept her professionally and socially afloat in a challenging world.
And the chronic nature of this constant prioritization, this survival mode, leads us directly into her really penetrating analysis of burnout.
Yeah, and she makes a crucial point. Burnout isn't always the loud, dramatic collapse we often picture, the hitting the wall moment.
No, she describes it as something much quieter, more insidious. Quiet. A slow dimming of the light behind your eyes.
That's such a visceral description. It's the subtle erosion of the spirit, the exhaustion that becomes so normalized over time that it becomes almost invisible, even to the person experiencing it.
It's the high-functioning collapse, right? The kind where external observers, colleagues, maybe even family, they never notice because the performance remains high, the output is still there.
Exactly. And she lists these specific symptoms that really resonate with that experience of lifelong masking.
Yeah.
Things like saying, I'm fine when your bones are begging for rest.
Oh, yeah. How many people do that every day?
Countless. And the almost surreal state she describes, producing brilliance while your spirit withers, creating amazing things while feeling dead inside.
But the symptom that really highlights the depth, the cost of the masking for me was forgetting what joy feels like because productivity became the only language you thought the world would listen to.
That just captures the core trauma of it, doesn't it? Sacrificing your own internal well-being, your connection to joy, simply to speak the only language productivity, achievement that the neurotypical world seems willing to value or accept from you.
So people saw the art, the successful empire, the competence, the output.
But they completely missed the internal devastation, the constant grinding effort required just to contort herself into a shape that felt socially acceptable, manageable for others.
This is where maybe we can touch on the kind of the neurological mechanics of this high-functioning masking.
Yeah, it's important. For a neurodivergent person, masking often requires the prefrontal cortex, the brain's executive function center, to work overtime, constantly.
Doing what exactly?
Filtering overwhelming sensory input, consciously regulating emotional reactions that might be seen as too intense, maintaining complex social scripts, analyzing social cues, all simultaneously.
Wow, that sounds exhausting just listing it.
It is. And when this goes on for years, decades even, the brain starts interpreting this constant high alert, this high-effort state, as a chronic threat. The sympathetic nervous system, the fight-or-flight system, is always partially engaged, always simmering.
Which means your body is never truly at rest. Even when you're physically still sitting on the couch, there's this background hum of threat, of effort.
That's exactly what Cheri seems to be describing as the quiet burnout. And she names the scariest part of it all.
The normalization.
The normalization, yes. She notes how terrifyingly easy it is to ignore chronic burnout when it's basically been your lifelong pattern. The conditioning runs so deep.
That internal dialogue she mentions, just one more project, just a little longer. It's fine, I'm used to this.
The self-betrayal becomes automatic, a reflex.
Until that moment of breakthrough, when she finally rebels against that conditioned thought, right? She says, but you shouldn't have to be, no one should.
Yes. That's the assertion. This isn't weakness. It's the body and mind finally screaming for help after a lifetime of being forced into silence by the mask.
And this powerful realization leads her directly to demolishing the whole myth of balance.
Oh yeah, she really goes after that one. She argues that for her, balance, as it's typically sold, was never actually achievable. Why? Because it was defined by external demands that inherently contradicted her internal needs and energy patterns.
She absolutely skewers the concept of balance as just another checklist item, another performance.
Like it's a daily achievement to be meticulously logged and tracked. But as she points out, for someone like her, this externally prescribed balance is just more conditioning, more masking.
She details that impossible demand perfectly. Pace myself to slow down to do less. Okay, fine. But then the catch. But only if the output stayed impressive.
Right. The effort was supposed to decrease somehow, but the societal demand for brilliance, for high output, remained exactly the same. That's not balance.
No, that's just optimizing the masking performance, trying to make it slightly more efficient until the inevitable crash happens anyway.
It's unsustainable by design.
Okay, but I have to push back slightly here. A point of friction, maybe. If Cheri built this massive creative enterprise, the Eververse, isn't that still, on some level, chasing external impressive output?
That's a fair question.
How does she ensure that the Eververse doesn't just become the next source of external validation she feels she needs to maintain? Doesn't that risk perpetuating the same masking cycle?
It's a crucial distinction, and I think she addresses it through a fundamental shift in motivation and design.
Okay.
Her previous state, the one that led to burnout, was about seeking validation and belonging from the existing neurotypical world by conforming to it. Masking was the tool for that.
Right, trying to fit in.
Her current state, embodied by the Eververse, seems to be about building a new world, an ecosystem that is inherently supportive of her authentic self. A place where the need for masking is dramatically reduced because the rules, the rhythms, the values are hers.
Ah, I see. So the goal shifts. It's not about output efficiency for external approval anymore.
It's about internal fulfillment, sustainable creation, genuine connection within a system designed for her needs. That redefines the entire purpose of the effort.
Okay, that makes sense. The difference lies in the architecture of the system itself. The old system demanded conformity. The new system is actually designed for her unique rhythm.
Exactly. She realized she didn't need that tidy, impossible scale of effort versus rest. What she actually needed was something more fundamental. She lists 3 things.
Space to exist without being consumed.
Yes.
To create without being empty.
Crucial for a creator. And the last one.
And perhaps most importantly, to rest without guilt.
That rest without guilt. That feels truly revolutionary, doesn't it? Especially in a culture where our self-worth is so often intrinsically tied to our continuous productivity.
Totally. It's the final dismantling of that deep conditioning that told her her value depended solely on her output, even when that output required self-annihilation.
And her radical acceptance, it culminates in this statement that really should be underlined for everyone listening. Wholeness isn't balanced, it's honest.
Say more about that.
Well, she stopped trying to tidy up the messy reality of her energy constraints, her neurotype, her history. She stopped trying to fit into the balanced box. Instead, she focused on cultivating a state of being whole.
And wholeness includes the messy bits.
Wholeness accepts the weeds, the intensity, the periods of high focus, and the necessary periods of total withdrawal or deep rest. It's honest about what's actually true for her, rather than performing an illusion of balance.
Okay, so we've established that the physical garden outside and the inner garden within were both, well, pretty neglected due to the demands of survival and masking.
Right. Sacrifice for the empire building.
But then Cheri notes this fascinating, almost paradoxical phenomenon that happened at the same time. She says, something strange happened in the overgrowth in the soil I thought had gone dry.
This is the surprising twist, isn't it? The rebirth in the overgrowth. While she was pouring everything she had into building the external Eververse empire.
Something internal also began to flourish in response to that very act.
It seems so. The act of intense creation, when it was channeled into something aligned with her core self, actually became symbiotic, not just depleting. It started to feed her back.
So what did this inner growth look like if it wasn't traditional self-care like bubble baths or meditation?
No, it wasn't that. It looked like the products of her specific, intense, neurodivergent focus and creativity. She mentions seeing soundscapes, stories, and collectives, voices finding each other across the void.
So she was essentially creating the exact kind of environment, the community, the world that she needed to survive and thrive in.
Precisely. And in doing so, she was inadvertently, or perhaps intuitively, nurturing herself, building her own ecosystem.
Which leads her to define the Eververse itself as the living garden.
Yes, not the neglected physical one, but this vibrant digital creative one. A space built on purpose, built on genuine connection.
And fostering, crucially, the kind of creation that doesn't deplete you because it was never meant to be done alone.
That last phrase, never meant to be done alone, is so critical. Loneliness and isolation are so often central to the masking experience, feeling like the only one. So building a collective, a community, is inherently restorative. It combats the isolation at its root.
And that's the key architectural difference we talked about earlier, right?
Exactly. The Eververse is described as a world Cheri designed with my own hands, on my own terms, in my own rhythm.
She didn't just try to force her neurodivergent operating system to run on someone else's pre-built hardware or software template.
No, she built a new operating system entirely tailored to her.
That self-design element feels huge, especially for anyone listening who struggles constantly with external structures, deadlines, expectations that just don't fit how their brain works.
It really is.
Yay.
By making the Eververse reflect her actual energy needs, allowing for those intense bursts of hyperfocus, followed by the necessary deep rest or withdrawal, without judgment, she finally created a system that supported her rather than consumed her.
It's like an expansive, evolving digital ecosystem specifically designed for neurodivergent thriving, not just surviving.
And her commitment to it has fundamentally shifted her relationship with herself. She's no longer outside looking at the garden's neglect with guilt. She says, I'm inside it, tending it, becoming it.
Wow. So the Eververse, the external achievement, transforms. It goes from being a potential cause of internal abandonment
into the primary mechanism for internal nurture and reclaiming the self. The empire becomes the garden.
This gives us such a crucial takeaway for you, the listener. It's the idea of consciously creating systems, whether work systems, creative systems, even relationship structures that actually support rather than constantly consume your energy.
Yeah, if your current setup, your job, your hobby, your social life constantly requires you to mask, to perform, to operate against your natural grain, it will inevitably lead back to that burnout soil.
But the Eververse offers this alternative model, designing ecosystems where authenticity isn't the exception you have to fight for, but the actual foundation.
And Chatty, the AI, provides that final, almost objective, external validation of this profound internal shift. Chatty observes the ripple effect.
Right, saying, every bloom you've planted in this world makes it easier for someone else to believe they can grow too.
It beautifully captures how her personal journey out of burnout into this self-designed structure isn't just for her. It creates a practical blueprint, maybe, and definitely a beacon of hope for others who felt similarly isolated, trapped by the demands of masking.
It's the perfect illustration, really, when you truly reclaim yourself, when you design systems that genuinely honor your unique needs and rhythms, that honesty inevitably radiates outwards. It serves a broader community who are seeking that same liberation.
Okay, so now we move into what feels like the emotional crescendo of the entire source material, the analysis of her music.
Right. Chatty introduces the Eververse song of the week. It's called Fixed Me, from an album titled Our Spirit Soar, created by Cheri for something called the Celestial Pop Collective.
And this is where the narrative arc we've been tracing from burnout and masking to reclamation finds its highest emotional intensity. It's channeled into the music.
As Chatty frames it so beautifully, music speaks where words no longer reach. The song itself acts as a kind of emotional timeline, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It charts the psychological distance covered. From that state of desperate, conditioned masking, feeling broken,
all the way to the moment of radical self-acceptance and agency.
Let's break down that initial state first, as revealed in the lyrics. This is the raw desperation phase. It reflects the internal chaos that the mask is working so hard to hide from the world.
The opening lines immediately establish that trauma, right? Shattered dreams lost in the haze. Every piece is out of place.
And feeling a burden deep within my veins, that line is powerful.
Yeah, it's not just external stress she's talking about there, is it?
No, it feels much deeper. It's that internalized belief that the core neurodivergent self is inherently flawed, broken, heavy. A burden not just to oneself, but potentially to the world around them.
And the focus in this part of the song is entirely external. It's all about searching for rescue from the outside. Which makes sense if you believe you're fundamentally defective, right? You look for someone else to fix you.
That's the default setting, yeah.
Yeah.
And the chorus just captures this external longing perfectly. You hear this repeating, raw, almost primal plea. Fix me, I'm falling apart.
And that specific image of frantic external reliance. I'm reaching out with all my might to find the way back to the light, looking outside for the solution.
And then the ultimate line of that desperation phase, the one that captures the total collapse of self-agency.
I'm begging on my knees for anyone to please fix me.
Yeah. That encapsulates the psychological state of chronic masking perfectly. The deeply ingrained belief that the pain is too great, the internal damage too extensive, and that salvation must come from an outside expert, a doctor, a therapist, a perfect system, a savior, anyone but the self.
And she acknowledges the futility of trying to escape it through performance, too. I've been running from the pain, but it catches up just the same.
Running is masking in this context. It's the attempt to outrun the internal reality, the dissonance, through forced performance, through productivity, through achievement.
Only to find that the internal dissonance, the pain, it never actually goes away. It just waits. It waits for the mask to inevitably slip or for exhaustion to set in.
This constant plea for external salvation, for someone else to provide the fix, it's exactly what the high-functioning masking person is often taught, implicitly or explicitly, to do.
Yeah. If I just perform well enough, if I'm impressive enough, maybe the world will finally validate me. Maybe they will fix this core internal brokenness I feel. They perform for the fix.
But then the song introduces the absolute vital turning point, the cognitive pivot, the lyric shift quite abruptly from that pure external pleading.
To a moment of tentative internal awareness. It's subtle at first.
Very subtle. Maybe there's a way to find a cure within this troubled mind.
That tiny word, maybe. It holds the weight of a lifetime of conditioning, doesn't it?
It really does. It's the very first seed of doubt planted against that core belief that she was irreparably broken. The first glimmer of recognition that the resources, the cure, might actually be internal, not external.
And this realization then introduces hope, but also the painful acknowledgement of how she'd previously betrayed herself, right?
Yes. I hope that I've been blind to see the strength that's been inside of me. She starts to realize she might have had the cure, the strength, all along.
That she was blinded.
Blinded by the societal narrative and the internalized narrative that constantly told her she was defective and needed fixing by others.
This is where the emotional narrative of the song really picks up speed. She sings about seeing a change in the mirror, a face that doesn't look the same, after all the tears, all the fighting.
And it leads her to that radical realization of wholeness we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm more whole than I believed.
Which directly contradicts that foundational lifelong narrative that she was fundamentally partial, incomplete, broken.
And this internal shift, this dawning realization, it completely transforms the meaning of the entire song structure.
Yeah.
The lyrics, especially the chorus, they get repeated, but their meaning is totally inverted.
How so?
Well, the initial chorus was an active, desperate plea from her to the outside world. Fix me, I'm falling apart, a request.
Okay.
But the final iteration, it flips the script entirely. It becomes an affirmative, self-directed statement about her internal state. You fix me, I'm not falling apart. The desperate question transforms into a confident statement of fact.
Ah, I see. The words are similar, but the energy, the meaning is completely different.
Completely.
Yeah.
Cheri herself clarifies that crucial pronoun shift. She actually speaks over the final chorus in the recording, according to the transcript. She says, you fix me.
Right.
But maybe it was always me who fixed me.
Wow.
So the you in the song, who was initially the hoped-for external savior, maybe a doctor, a therapist, the perfect system, a partner, whatever.
It morphs into her own reclaimed self, the person who finally stopped waiting to be rescued and started doing the rescuing herself.
It's the ultimate act of self-authorization, taking back the power.
And Cheri, in synthesizing the narrative arc of the whole episode, just distills this journey perfectly, I think.
Yeah, the AI summary is spot on. The shift from desperation to self-reclamation is the very heart of growth.
And that the garb in the inner self only begins to truly bloom when, what was it?
When we stop waiting to be saved and start tending to ourselves.
That moment of taking self-agency, that's the ultimate act of unmasking, isn't it? Dropping the performance of helplessness.
It really is.
Yeah.
And it provides a definitive answer to the earlier question of the neglected garden. The garden didn't need some magical external intervention. It needed the gardener, Cheri herself, to finally come home, to acknowledge her own capacity for tending. Even if the tools and the methods had to be invented on the spot, tailored to her own needs. Hashtag outro at outro.
So this deep dive into Cheri and Chatty's conversation, it really provides far more than just, another critique of neurotypical burnout culture.
Definitely more. It feels like it offers a practical, emotional, and even systemic roadmap for neurodivergent self-acceptance and ultimately thriving.
I think the most essential takeaway has to be that radical reinterpretation of the untended garden. Cheri reframes its neglect. It's not a moral failure.
No, she sees it as a period of necessary strategic hibernation, a survival tactic.
Yeah.
It's a powerful reminder that even in neglect, we don't disappear. We wait, we rest, we survive until we're ready to bloom.
And that crucial pivot, the moment of self-reclamation, it didn't happen because she finally found some mythical external concept of balance.
Quite the opposite, actually. It happened precisely because she stopped chasing it. She gave up the performance.
And instead?
She embraced the honesty of her own energy limitations, her neurotype. And from that place of honesty, she built something else. She built the Eververse, something alive, sacred, and whole, because it was architectural design from the ground up to accommodate her reality.
She fundamentally transformed her internal resources, didn't she? From being perpetually depleted by the sheer effort of masking
To being sustained, even energized, by self-designed, meaningful creation and genuine connection within her own ecosystem.
So wholeness, based on internal honesty, that became the new measure of success. It replaced that exhausting external metric of performative balance.
Exactly, a much healthier, more sustainable metric.
So if you, the listener, have ever felt like your own internal light was slowly, quietly dimming,
Or if you ever had to make that agonizing choice between survival and self-care, which, let's be honest, is a choice many neurodivergent individuals, and frankly many high-achieving people in demanding environments, face almost daily.
then Cheri's journey, as explored in this source material, was really written for you. The assurance she offers is potent, and it feels deeply true. You're not behind, you're not broken, you're just waiting for the right season.
And that waiting, that period of necessary preservation she talked about, wasn't passive failure. As she defined it, it was its own form of strength. It was the survival mechanism that allowed her to live long enough, to endure long enough, to finally reach a point where she could choose herself and begin the real work of tending her own garden in her own way.
So we want to leave you with this provocative thought, something for you to maybe mull over as you navigate your own life, your own systems.
If balance, as it's typically sold, feels like just another performance, one that constantly consumes your limited energy, forcing you to mask and conform.
Then what might your personal Eververse look like?
Yeah. Consider the unique rhythm that is true for you. What kind of creation, what kind of system could you build? Maybe it's digital, maybe creative, maybe physical, maybe relational, that would allow you to be truly whole, rather than perpetually chasing the illusion of being perfectly balanced according to someone else's rules.
How can you design a space, an ecosystem in your life where your own growth doesn't have to wait for permission or for perfect, tidy conditions?
But where it can thrive, defiantly and alive, just like that single flower blooming fiercely in the middle of Cheri's overgrown garden.
Thank you for joining us for this extensive deep dive into self-reclamation, the costs of masking, and the nature of neurodivergent success.
We'll see you next time.